Well, welcome on back to the Busy Bee Mindset, guys. Good to see you again. This morning it's a little bit hotter out here in Texas. Today I really wanted to just talk about the chapter I listened to yesterday by David Goggins in his book Never Finished on his Audible. It was chapter 4, Evolution number 4. It was pretty short and sweet, to be honest, but it was the podcast afterwards that really got lengthy, and he interviewed his mom to talk about everything that she experienced, everything that she witnessed, and the strength and courage that she even got to even say all of this stuff. I'll keep this video pretty short and sweet, to be honest, because I don't relate to this traumatic experience that much. I can relate to certain aspects, but I've just never been in this kind of situation myself before. But maybe one of you guys have, and maybe this message is important. Essentially, David Goggins' mom was in a pretty abusive relationship with Goggins' father, and she would get slapped, beat, hit. It was pretty rough, but what we ended up finding out in the chapter, it's very short. It's honestly only like 9 minutes to listen to, and he's talking about how certain people who live through experiences like that, very traumatic experience like that, they end up holding all of that in and not really moving forward. And sometimes, although Goggins is the guy who says, I pushed through all the hard, I pushed through all the pain, and that's what I got to do to keep moving forward. He specifically states in this chapter too, or in the podcast, one of the two, that sometimes in certain situations like that, it's okay to just move on and forget, like take a hard stop and remember that you don't have to be in these kinds of situations. You don't have to let yourself feel all of that just because it's what you know is comfortable to you, because you're not sure if there's anything better out there. It's very human tendency to be attracted to that of which you know. And he dives on deep to pretty much say that with his mom, when she finally got the courage to move out and leave their father. He also mentioned that later on down the years, she ends up calling Goggins and telling him like, hey, I'm about to marry this man, I'm about to go pick him up, but yada yada. But he was being released from prison after a 10-year sentence. And Goggins asked her, what was he in prison for? And she didn't want to answer, but he ended up finding out that he was in prison for choking his ex-girlfriend or ex-wife to death because of some drugs. And Goggins pretty much goes on to explain how he absolutely loves his mother. She's one of the strongest people he knows, and he's extremely impressed by what she's been able to do over the years. And outside of all of these books or interviews, they've had multiple talks about their history because he just wants to like understand better too. Anyways, he ends up saying that he doesn't necessarily blame her for everything, but he does go ahead and state because she was just in that relationship for so long and she carried all that baggage with her, it was almost as though that's what was comfortable to her. That's what she knew. And that relationship didn't even end up lasting that long. It was 2 years before they got divorced, and then another couple of years after that before that guy overdosed. So it all ties into the fact that people follow certain tendencies. We can't change unless we want to change. I think most of us know that. If someone tries to change you, you're probably not going to change. And sometimes it takes a long time for us as human individuals to want to change as well. I know for me, anytime that I've ever done anything of significance in my life, I had to really dial back and do a self-analyzation of myself, finding out exactly what it was that I didn't like about myself, and then figuring out what I needed to do to go ahead and become a better version. Sacrifices needed to be made, my mindset needed to be changed, and I needed to have a goal or a vision that I was consistently trying to move forward to. For me, that's this YouTube channel, right? I had to sacrifice my time of just waking up and really not doing anything. Sometimes I would go on a walk, sometimes I wouldn't, or sometimes I would just play video games the minute I wake up until I go to work. And I could notice that there was a downward spiral happening. And I said, I gotta get out of this habit. I gotta go ahead and get back to what I think will make me a more positive person. And doing these videos is a way to help me utilize that fact. It's a way to help me remember who I want to be as a person. When we dive into the podcast version though, this is a 40-minute interview between him and his mom. And they go on to explain how he actually wanted to put a lot of the things that he had in this book in his very first book, Can't Hurt Me. But she wouldn't let him. She told him, no, Goggins, I don't want to do that. In this one, she openly starts talking about how after reading his book, after following along what he's doing, after seeing how much of his life that Goggins put out there for the world and public to know and see and hear and listen, that she had the courage to do it herself. And that's what she's here today. Well, not today, obviously, but in the podcast, Goggins is interviewing her and telling her like what was going on through your mind, like what was happening during all this time. And I'm not gonna get into the nitty-gritty details, but long story short, she goes on to say how when she was going through that period of time in Buffalo, and she had Goggins as her son, and she had Truans Jr. as her son, and she had Truans, the guy who was pretty much slapped her if she ever looked at any other person. But later on in the relationship, right before she left, right before she made the decision that, hey, I'm out of here, she knew that Truans would be on the phone plenty of times talking to another girl, talking to another woman. And one day she finally just snapped. She couldn't take it anymore. She couldn't take any of the physical abuse anymore. She never knew what was gonna happen. She never knew if she did anything right or wrong. I mean, she even explains how sometimes if Goggins were to wet the bed and Truans were to come home, he would pretty much physically beat her because she allowed Goggins to wet the bed. So that just gives you an idea of how messed up the relationship actually was. Anyways, she goes on to explain to Goggins that what ended up happening in all of that was the fact that I had a flight or fight moment, but she talks about a fight or flight response that most people aren't really aware of. Most people know that we either fight or we either run away when we're stuck in these kind of situations. But there is a third option. Basically, a deer stuck in headlights when you freeze. And so she explains in that time, she always knew that Goggins was a fighter. He was always willing to move forward and fight for what is right, what he believed in. His brother was emotionally, he would just go away. He didn't want to really understand or comprehend all of this. But she was frozen in that moment in that time, she didn't know what to do. She didn't know what she could do. All she knew is that if she did left, if she did commit suicide, then her kids would be in danger, being left with this man by himself. Her kids wouldn't be able to go to her parents because her parents wouldn't be able to fend off against their dad. And she explains how she was frozen and all that. And even after she left that horrendous situation, there was still, it was like she was a prisoner of war, is how David describes it. But in all of that moment, it was also, and when she finally left, as if she brought the prison walls with her. There's a lot of things that happen on in that moment that she was never able to really let go. It moves with you. It'll always be a part of her. That part of her life happened. It's not like she can just erase it and forget it. She learned some experiences and she moved on. But it took a very, very long time, because even when it was just David and his mom living on their own for the longest time, she was still struggling with some things. And I say all of this to you guys because, again, I've never been in a physically abusive relationship. But what I can relate to in that whole entire story is feeling stuck, feeling frozen in a spot, right? I mean, there's plenty of times where I guess I've either been a fighter and I've stuck it around and I've kept on moving forward, or sometimes I just flee, right? We could say that I left plenty of other jobs to pursue different opportunities because I didn't like what was presented in front of me. But I think we've all can relate to the feeling of sometimes just being stuck and having something weigh on us so much that it prevents us from fully moving forward. And so if any of you guys are stuck for whatever reason, for whatever experience that you've ever felt, if any of you guys feel like you just can't really move forward because of X, Y, and Z, then really stop and think and do self-analyzation, reflect on what's been going on. The best thing that I could say, at least what's helped to me, and I know it's cliche, but it's true, is just remembering what you're grateful for. Remembering the things that you have that other people don't. I've got health, I've got vision, I've got hearing, I can walk on my 2 feet. It's a beautiful day, I can feel the sunlight. My skin doesn't hurt nearly as bad as it used to. I've had extremely bad, severe eczema, and it's being maintained really well. And I couldn't be any more happier than that. Even those little things help me remember why I'm here, why I keep moving forward, why I have these ambitions of mine. Because sometimes I go to work and I swear to God, before you take these calls, I feel like I'm a deer stuck in headlights. I don't want to move. I don't want to tackle on these calls, these strangers, and then have to try to sell all this stuff. But at the same time, I don't want to be stuck where I'm at. I personally want to keep moving forward and doing something with my life. And hopefully you guys can get something out of this message. I know I'm not the best speaker. I know I'm not the best, podcaster, YouTuber. But hopefully I can improve with each and every video. Hopefully, I know not every video is going to be a home run, but maybe one of these does hit you guys. And I'm hoping you guys will learn how to look inside of yourself and find out what truly is making you feel the way that you do and what you can do to move forward and past that. That's pretty much all I have, guys. Y'all have a wonderful rest of your day, and peace out. Like, comment, and subscribe. You know the drill.